United Neighbors Annual Forum. Thanks for reporting that. Might have to accept the. I just want to have to got it.
That's the
warrant. Okay.
Oh, yes, it is, sir.
Oh, it's us?
Yeah.
And it's
do
you.
that so they can see
Yeah.
that. They're going to start it. Technology. There we go. All right. My name is Jeff Horsfall, and I have served as president of CPUN for the last 2 years. And I want to thank you for joining us either virtually or in person. I also want to thank our gracious host, the MCA, and Lawrence in particular, who's just done a great job for us. They've been great supporters of ours over the years, and this year in particular, hosting events like this and the recent candidates forum. So thank you to the MCA for all of their help. If you're new to our organization, I know I've met a couple of people here tonight that are. Central Park United Neighbors, or CPUN, is the registered neighborhood organization, or RNO, for the Central Park community in Denver and Aurora. We are here to facilitate dialogue and create awareness around opportunities to engage on topics of importance to this community. We help people find their way into a process so that resident questions, concerns, and ideas for a better community can be addressed in a constructive and inclusive way. We promote public service, civil civic discourse, and collective advocacy. At monthly meetings, not dissimilar to this one, and through the work of our 6 working committees, CPUN facilitates the discussion of key issues with neighbors, engages in proactive problem avoidance, and amicable problem solving. We are committed to providing an inclusive and welcoming environment for all members of our community. This is an all-volunteer board of your neighbors and a registered 501c3. As I said, this is our annual forum, and while it in many ways resembles our monthly meetings, it does differ in a couple of key ways. One is that it is at this meeting that residents have the opportunity to vote on a slate of residents who will represent the community on this board for a 2-year term. I'll discuss that in a little more detail when we come to that point. Second, where our monthly meetings tend to offer monthly news and updates, this annual forum tends to emphasize broader changes over the past year, as well as kind of take a look into the year ahead. Our agenda for the evening, as you can see here, is that we'll open with the CPUN board business, including a summary of our work from the last year and a presentation of the previously mentioned slate. We'll then have a number of guest speakers, opening with the Foundation for Sustainable Urban Communities, represented by Brian Weber, who in partnership with 2 CPUN board members, Carol Hunter and Amanda Alshouse right here, have organized a volunteer initiative that will support a number of our local schools. We will also have presentations. Is that rain?
Right.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
That came fast. Let's see. I like being in person again. It's fun. We'll also have presentations from our city auditor, Tim O'Brien, Amanda. Sorry for the feedback. Okay, there we go. And the MCA, Diane Dieter and Kevin Burnett here, who will give everyone a peek into pool and farmers market season, which I know is highly anticipated here in Central Park. And then we'll close with a few closing remarks from our city councilman, Chris Herndon. If you don't mind going to the next slide there, Brian. It was a busy year for our board, not only in terms of the activity of our members, but the direct engagement we had from residents. Our DEI committee hosted community members at a gathering in Cottonwood Park, for example, and our Safe Streets and Health and Safety Committee saw significant increases in participation as well. Our Education Committee testified at before the Board of Education late last year about community need for capacity in ECE and Northfield High School. And they also participated in a independent advisory group for DPS board member with DPS board member Michelle Quattlebaum. But when I reflect on what we really
that you actually voted or relegated to be your choices for.
Where's that one coming?
Well, I just got muted, so
I can still hear you. Who's ever talking?
Well, I unmuted myself because I got unmuted. I got muted, and I unmuted myself. So I'm just wondering, like, for city council candidates, who was it, the two that you promoted, and who did you favor for city council candidates?
I can't tell who's,
It's Spencer that's talking, but I didn't understand his question.
My question was, who were the two city council candidates that you proposed and that you put forward for city council?
So one of the two city council candidates that were proposed that you've seen at times too, but there were two.
Oh, we didn't- yeah, excuse me, that we didn't endorse any candidates or propose any candidates. What that is referring to are candidates forums that we hosted, where the candidates for the office came in and made their case, so to speak, to the voters. We were simply facilitating the vote.
Fair enough. So who were those two candidates that you facilitated this forum for? Just out of curiosity.
Forgive me, but now's not really the moment to be asking the question. I'd love to, if I could just get through the agenda here, I'd be happy to take questions in just a minute.
So, okay, so the moment comes later. All right, thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm having just a hard time hearing, but there will be a moment to ask questions, I'm sure, or we'll make sure of it. So when I kind of reflect back on what the past year was really about, it came down to what CPUN does best, which is really building community through forums that allow residents to engage on important topics. In an election year, as I was just explaining, we hosted our mayoral candidates as well as our city council District 8 candidates. We did that twice. Once in the, it's not a primary truly, but for lack of a better way of putting it, a primary. And then when the race came down to a runoff, we did it again with the two candidates that made that runoff. Safety and rising crime in particular were points of emphasis for our community this year. And we responded with a safety forum in November. The panelists for that forum included Denver District Attorney Beth McCann, State Representatives Jennifer Bacon and Stephen Woodrow, Denver Youth Violence Prevention Program Manager Felicia Rodriguez, and Denver Police Department Police Chief, Ron Thomas, along with Lieutenant Hines, who's been a good friend to CPUN for a long time. Separately, we received a thorough presentation from DPD on crime statistics in August, helping to put the issue into context and to identify opportunities for action. Also, a lot of commercial development is happening in Central Park right now, with runway 35 at the I-70 exchange getting a lot of attention from residents in particular. So we hosted the developers, I should say, of that project, as well as Brookfield and Councilman Herndon, in a forum that was focused not only on updating the community on what is happening at that site, but also exploring how residents can better collaborate with developers and the city on new projects in the future. And finally, this year's school choice window felt particularly high stakes for many residents, given the shifting bell schedules, busing schedules, capacity concerns, and a number of other issues. So we hosted Superintendent Marrero and other DPS representatives to get residents' questions answered so that they could make an informed decision for their families with respect to school choice. I want to take a moment now, Brian, if you don't mind going to the next slide, to introduce the members of the CPUN board that did all this great work. I've been on this board for going on 7 years, and this is as active of a group as I've been a part of. As I mentioned, CPUN is an all-volunteer board of Central Park residents. Board members serve a 2-year term and are elected as a slate by you, the residents of the community who attend this annual forum. Thank you to the entire board and their families for the time they've given to our community. If you're on the board, there's a lot of people around the table, would you mind giving just a quick wave if you're on the board? Maybe raise your hand on the chat if you're attending virtually this evening. Thank you very much. If you're not on the board, but the work that I'm describing is of interest to you, we meet on the third Tuesday of each month from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. Our meetings are always open to the public, and I encourage you to join us. We do have some open board seats, so if you're interested in learning more, please reach out to us at Central Park United Neighbors at gmail.com. Okay, next slide is the slate. So this year's slate consists, and forgive my poor Photoshop work, but this year's slate consists of 6 returning or incumbent, you might say, board members and 3 new board members. The slate was published to the community via social media and email last month. CPUN is proud to present this slate to the community. All have given of their time, their talents, and their energy to make Central Park a better place. And I want to make a particular point, I should say, of introducing Courtney, Matt, and Tommy. Matt and Tommy are here in the room with us this evening, who are new to the board, as I said, and are being introduced to the community for the first time. Thank you for the commitment that you're making to our board and to the Central Park community. So as I said earlier, the members of the community present, either in person or on the Zoom call, will vote on the slate in full, meaning we're not voting person by person, we're voting it as a slate. And if that slate is approved by a majority vote, all of the individuals on the slate will become board members. If the slate is not approved by majority vote, nominations for each open position shall be taken from the members present at the meeting, including the other directors. The individuals out of those so nominated receiving the most votes shall become directors. Those are the rules. What I really want to emphasize here is that I strongly encourage our residents to support this slate. This is a volunteer organization. People are giving a tremendous amount of time and energy and effort. I've seen all of their work up close for a long time now. I highly encourage everyone to support this slate. And so with that, I think though there's a couple ways that we could do this. The question here is, do you approve, if you don't mind going to the next slide, the slate of candidates to serve a 2-year term on the Central Park United Neighbors Board of Directors? An easy way to say this is, are there any objections to this slate? And again, if you're online, you're welcome to speak up as well. Seeing none, aware of none via Brian. Welcome to the board. If you're new, welcome back to the board. Okay, so we're getting ready for presentations, but I do want to pause here and take any questions. If there are questions in the room about anything that we've described about our year in review or the activities of this board, either in the room here or online, we're happy to field them.
I have a question on your.
Okay.
Spencer, if you want to unmute, you can re-ask your question if you still have a question.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I thought I heard someone else had a question though they wanted to ask.
That was our Vice President, Carol Hunter, who wants to wait till the end. So you're welcome to ask your question, Spencer.
Got it. Thank you. So I'm just curious, in terms of how these people are chosen and whatnot, what like and looking at the special districts that are here in Central Park, how much overlay is there between the special district of this and the Central Park United Neighbor, the CPUN? Is there quite a bit of overlap? Like, where does your compensation come from? How do you, relegate these sort of things?
Yeah, so we're not the MCA, we're not we're not the PCMD. We don't have any financial control. We don't have any we don't collect any money. It's nothing like that. This is a volunteer group of residents that create community engagement forums, and that is the extent of our influence and scope of work. So the board is here.
No, that's excellent to hear. So, like, hearing that, then, like, do you have any sort of initiative then to disband the special district that is the Central Park Special District, which essentially collects our tax dollars to line their own pockets. I mean, and that's what they're doing. Like it's publicly available. It's online. You can see exactly what their initiatives are. Do we have like, do you or do the people that you represent, you have any initiative to end that so that we don't have to deal with these special districts? And I'm not talking about the MCA. Like, I have no problem with the MCA, but there is a Central Park special district which is solely here to line their pockets with our dollars. And do you have any sort of initiative to end that?
No, Spencer, and I think your line of questioning here might just be misdirected. We don't take on initiatives like that. If we were to get involved in something like that, it would be to create forums to have create a dialogue, have an open conversation about it, but we take no position on it, and it's not in our purview to lead such a campaign.
Sure.
If you
Thank you, and I appreciate that. That's a fair answer, and for me to hear that answer, that means that I'm barking up the wrong tree, and I need to go find a different tree to bark up. So I do appreciate that answer, and really I do. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Spencer. Does anyone else have any questions?
What happened to the Health and Safety Committee? We did this big forum, got all these people here, and then it was gone.
Yeah, the Health and Safety Committee is still active. One of the co-chairs had to leave that committee, Jack, because he just couldn't support it himself any longer.
Okay,
And so what tends to happen with committees is they ebb and flow with the availability of the volunteers that helm them. These committees work because people are able to put in the time, not because we've chosen to disband it or anything like that. So going forward, in June, there will be a meeting, or at our monthly meeting, we'll have an opportunity for everyone to sign back up for committees, recommitting to the committees they want to be a part of for the coming year. That's a great opportunity to kind of regroup those efforts and then make plans in July, returning to board meetings in August.
thank you.
And I'm glad you asked that, Mary, because one of the important things that I always like to stress is that you do not need to be a board member to participate in our committees. Mary is not a board member. We have lots of lots of residents who just have a passion for a particular topic. That's the amount of time that they can give. And so if you're a resident that wants to either kind of dip their toe in the CPUN water, so to speak, or you just know that this is the thing you care about, committees are a great way to get started.
And chair the committees also. You don't have to be a board member.
Yeah,
Does that include me and what I'm passionate about here in ending the special district? Out of
No,
curiosity.
sorry.
All right, just thought I'd ask. Thank you.
Anything else? Yes, Carol.
This is a beautiful setup. Amy Campbell. She is the perfect example of what we were just talking about. I didn't know if you were going to do the regular committee reports, updates, and that's why Amy is here, but it does, well, what I want to do is give you the shout out you deserve. Amy is a community member, and she is the co-chair with me of the Safe Streets Committee, and she does far more work than I do. Yes, you do. And she's a stellar at it because she's really passionate about the issues, and she is dynamic. She is on point. She has great ideas, and she's just an example of what community members can do, and that we hope more community members do, is to get involved and to stay engaged. And you're kind of the model for that, Amy. So thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
Carol, I think we would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge that this will be Jeff's last meeting as
Absolutely.
president.
I thought he'd bring it up, but he didn't.
And I think, Jeff has been leading this group through the last 2 years and done a stellar job. I think in my opinion, Jeff has taken it, and I would say this, you left it better than you found it. And that's what we all try to do. And we appreciate it. We're sad that you are choosing your family over the. But I say that in jest because you're going back and giving your family time that they well deserve. So we appreciate it. And I think everybody in the community appreciates it. So thank you very much.
It's been very meaningful to be a part of this board, and I'll always be grateful for it. And I'll be grateful to all the people I worked with, both on the board and in the community. Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Yeah,
So are you staying on as past president, and are there other board members that aren't part of the slate that, have a different term and are continuing on the board?
yeah, that's a great question. I will not be continuing on the board. Today is my last day as a member of the CPUN board. There are other board members who will be back that were not on the slate this evening. So basically, take this list. Excuse me, do you mind going to the slate slide, Brian? Take that list, add me to it, and subtract them from that list. And those are the people that were not up for election this year, but will be up for election next year. The reason that we do that is that so we don't have too many people up for election at one time and creating kind of the potential for chaos or mass turnover or something like that.
Okay, thanks.
Does that make sense? Yes. Great. Okay. Let's get on with the presentations, and we're actually not too bad on time. And we're going to start with the Foundation for Sustainable Urban Communities. We have Brian Weber, Carol Hunter, and Amanda Alshouse speaking.
Okay, so shall I start? Okay, so I'm just going to give you a little bit of background about this on our yet to be named effort that the Education Committee has initiated. And Brian is not only in this position with the foundation, but he's also a member of our Education Committee, another volunteer from the community who's not on the board. So students and school staff have always needed community support for numerous reasons. We know that. We know it for parents, we know it if we know kids on any level. And in the last 3 years, the needs have increased and grown dramatically, both academically for children, socially, emotionally, financially. And there is no way that even if we had increased state and federal funding, that would cover all of the needs that children have and school staff have. In 2021, I just decided to go speak to I chose elementary schools, several school administrators about what turned out to be a very long and diverse list. We were in that pandemic where we were coming back in some degree to schools. And so I went in and spoke to some school administrators. I said, what do you need? Things have changed so much. And I got a very, very long list of things. And the lists were always different from school to school. And one thing that stuck with me, and it's stuck with Brian when I shared that with him, was one principal said to me, we need bodies. And I thought, okay, yeah, people volunteer. And when she just started to describe what that meant, it took on a different dimension. They needed adults present on the campus before school, during school, and after school in a variety of capacities. So that stuck with me, stuck with Brian. And so I talked to Brian about that. I guess it was last year. We started a conversation, and Brian arranged for, because the foundation is so committed to schools in this community, to speak with school administrators about this. And then Brian, we did this together, and then he went on his own and sort of restarted the conversation. And really what we've come up with is that some supports are very traditional. I mean, if I could say to you, school volunteer, everybody would have a little idea of what that meant, whether you have children or not. And some ideas that I think are very feasible are less so. Some ideas came from reading professional journals that I have, because this is an issue around the country. It's not just DPS. It's in public schools everywhere. So we also some feedback from students and families. And we realize it's really important to have parental support. It's there, but I don't have a student at home anymore. But I really think that this community has the capacity to support students and staff, whether or not you've ever had children or whether you have children. In some ways, I would like to see that tip to people like me, because parents are just, I wouldn't want to have a school age child right now at home. And I don't want people to take that in a negative way. It's so hard. And I know enough people that have children at home right now to know how hard it is, not just in Denver, but people that I know in other parts of the country. And I think that our community, Central Park, is a community where many people without children have the resources, not everybody, certainly, but have financial resources, they have time, or they have both. And they just need to know what they can do. And we really need to be specific about that. We need to make it inviting. And I think we also need to be really creative, which we've started to be. So people would say, wow, never thought of that. And I think there's something for everybody. So that's really what we're working on together. And I just, so when Brian and I met with the new principal of Northfield High School this afternoon, and I just came back kind of like invigorated, and she's very enthusiastic. She's a very empathetic person, and she had a lot of great ideas, things she's already done. So I know that this can work. So I had my little professional education week that I had set aside, picked it up when I got back from this meeting, and I just want to share this with you. No one should doubt the severity and scale of the crises confronting public education and the extent to which they are having an impact on student learning, historic declines in student achievement and enrollment, anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts at epidemic levels among youth, culture wars that feed off and further exacerbate lost trust and plummeting confidence in our public schools, all while we continue to recover from a pandemic. So that's what's guiding me. I'm not going to speak for other members of the education committee. And Brian is going to talk with you a little bit now about what the foundation, what he really has done to make this formal.
Thanks. Well, Carol explained, obviously schools need volunteers, but often people don't know, are reluctant to even approach a school, not wanting to go into a school and volunteer or say they want to. And there's really not, the school wants them to do things they don't really want to do. So we developed a website called Central Park School Volunteers. And what it is, each school in Central Park has a page on which a school administrative person simply writes an email of the needs that they have. We need volunteers, we need donations, we need, whatever it is. And it goes right to our site and it automatically posts it on their page. And so that if you're interested in volunteering, you can go to the site and you can look at each page and you can see, oh, I would not want to do that, but I do want to do that. And we hope that that's one of the things we'll get out of this, that people will feel much more comfortable and looking for things to do at schools. It's up and running now. But what we found is asking a school office administrator to do one more thing, basically, is I just never like to do that. And so we sort of switched it, and we want to recruit volunteers, parents or others who would be responsible to contact each school in Central Park. Hopefully we have one volunteer for each school. Every 2 weeks, you reach out to a specific person who would be assigned to this, and you communicate email or phone call, whatever works best, and just to keep contact going with CPUN and the community and school, and hopefully then those conversations will result in getting things to put on the site about Ashley or Swigert needs tutors in the afternoons at 3 to 5, that kind of thing. And by owning a school, by making one person responsible for school, it's a manageable thing. And it doesn't take a huge amount of time, but it could really do a lot of good for a lot of folks. And it also gives people the opportunity to volunteer in a way that works for them. So that's what, and Amanda and Carol's help, we're going to be looking for folks that take this on, and we're pretty sure we can find those folks. And looking forward to this next school year, helping this community be more connected to their schools, and we're hoping to institutionalize it with CPUN. This becomes an annual thing that CPUN more or less operates the education committee. Not that Carol, I don't mean that she has to take on a lot of extra work. It's like, well, help you. But seriously, CPUN is the ideal place to be gathering folks to help them support their community. And I'm really optimistic about this. I think it's a really, I hope, a really good way to give those schools resources that they need.
And Amanda is co-chair of the education committee. Do you want to add anything?
That's right. So while that's a lot, I think the additional element that we're striving to do is to just bridge events and initiatives at the school level across the community. And that's the other aspect that we'll be asking for the contacts at each school to help us with, so that we can include in our monthly emails what's happening at each school if there's an event that's open to the community, so that we can help make schools more open to the community when those opportunities exist, so that people know about them.
One other thing, I mean, interrupt you. We've also developed a new education news site called Central Park Education News, cpbdnews.org. And it focuses on schools in Central Park and also DPS. And obviously there's a lot always going on, particularly right now there is with the district, but also with all of these schools. And there's most of the schools really don't get much attention. And most schools by nature of just taking care of everything you have to do are in silos. Principals, some of the principals do not even know each other, simply because of the time demands of their jobs. So I'm focusing on everything from Busy Bee has an incredible GT magnet to issues with McAuliffe security, issues with DPS investigating McAuliffe's principal, or speaking out about having a student he has to pat down every day. And these are the kinds of things that I think this community is interested in knowing about. And there hasn't really been a vehicle to do that. And our foundation decided this would be a good way for me to waste my time. And seriously, and it's I think it's going very well. And you can subscribe at cpebnews.org. Might find it interesting.
Brian,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Question.
You mentioned the URL for the news website. Could you mention the URL for the volunteer website?
It's cpsvols.org.
Thank you.
I put that in the chat panel.
We do have a question on the chat. So Spencer, you can.
Thank you. Thank you for recognizing me. I'm curious, like, as you guys are talking about these things, like what kind of outreach, what kind of marketing promotions do you have to get the people of the community, the people, the parents involved to try and do these things? Like I can say as a parent myself who's very involved and very aware, I've not seen any of these things. So as we're trying to bring the community, bring the parents in and whatnot, what is the outreach there, and do we need to address that, and how do we get that better?
I've been doing outreach on social media and also through area newsletters. MCA has run ad basically about the CPED, and as has CPUN. And I am actually meeting with a social media specialist tomorrow about marketing this more. And you're exactly right, Spencer. It needs to be better known, and it's not been easy to do that. But I am very focused on doing a lot better at that. Thank you.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. And if I can continue the conversation, I mean, do we have a budget? Is there, is there funding for maybe getting out on CPR? putting the word out there. I mean, Central Park, we're 33,000 strong. We're one of the biggest neighborhoods in Denver, right? You know, we are a massive neighborhood amongst, you know, the 70, 80 plus neighborhoods in Denver. You know, do we have these kinds of initiatives, tactical guides to try and, you know, figure out how we can really get the message out there, do our best, like, I'm sorry, you understand what I'm saying though? Like, how do we?
No,
Go
you're,
ahead.
I completely agree with you. We post on, Central Park, Facebook pages and various parts of the community. We get good response from that, but it's been a little slow going and just, but it's been word of mouth. It's been people sharing stories and, some of that, you know, the organic, but we're going to be doing much more targeted at specific things. Thanks, Spencer, appreciate it.
A couple questions for me. Have the schools started posting volunteer opportunities yet?
No.
When will when that'll go?
We're aiming for the beginning of the school year.
Okay,
And if anyone is interested in being a volunteer to communicate with a school through this, I would love to hear from you.
I just have one question because I looked at the schools on the website and I noticed that the DSST schools are not among the schools. I was wondering if there's been any engagement.
They're not on
On
volunteer. Oh, I'm sorry. Pardon me.
Oh, yeah, no, I was just wondering on the volunteers website, has there been any sort of outreach or engagement with Conservatory Green or Montview?
I've talked with Bill Kurtz. He's an old friend and we included him in the news site. Wasn't terribly interested in the volunteer one, but I intend to check back with him in the fall. He tends to want to be included in whatever's going on. And so if he wants to, we'll include him. And if you, at your school or at principals or anything, would like to talk about that, love to hear from you.
Yeah,
Right.
I am a student at one of the DSST schools, so just knowing like they often do need volunteers, so I can kind of reach out to some of those.
Look,
involved
I
to see
saw
if they could get
Bill on
involved.
some on Sunday. I'll reconnect with him, okay?
we have time for about one more question before we need to keep the.
Can I just make a comment then?
Yeah,
Just
please.
This is for Spencer, on Zoom. I just want to put in a plug for the outreach committee, which does communications, for CPUN. So if you're interested in that, we will have a vacancy on that committee since Jeff will be gone after today. So
I appreciate that. My email's in the chat. Well, I sent it to Liz. But yeah, no, please, hit me up. I'm happy to contribute. I'm new here. I'm sorry to be a fly in the ointment, but happy to be of a service anywhere that I can.
Any last question for Brian or Carol? It's a fantastic initiative. Thank you very much for the effort you've put into it. All right, we'll carry on to our next speaker, and that is we have with us from our city's auditor's office, the city auditor, Timothy O'Brien. You're welcome to join us. Auditor O'Brien, I saw you join in a little late, so I just thought I'd orient you. We've got the people in the room, but we also have people over Zoom. We've got your slides ready to go, and so you're welcome to have a seat.
Do I need to be close to the mic or?
Nope, we can hear you through the ceiling.
I'm ready if you are.
Yeah, go.
Just say next.
Okay, I will do that. Thank you very much. And thank you for sharing your time with me this evening. I'm Tim O'Brien. I'm your Denver auditor. I was recently reelected to a third term, which will begin in July, along with the mayor and the council, and those other people that you're probably hearing about today. We can go to the next slide, please. Next slide. So those are the 4 elected offices in the city and county of Denver, 13 members of the council. They're all elected at the same time. They're not like terms are staggered, so there would be elections every year. We are all basically the same cycle. As you know, there is a mayoral runoff. I got my ballot today. I don't know, many of you might have gotten a ballot. If you didn't get it today, you'll probably get it tomorrow or the next day. Clerk and recorder, and myself as the auditor. I like to think that we work for all of you. I mean, you are the people that, it's your government, it's your tax dollars that fund the government. What we try to do is provide accountability and transparency over your tax dollars and your government, how it works. Next slide, please. As I say, I like to, the auditor goes where your tax dollars go. In the 8 years I've been in this position, I've had a number of departments or agencies really resist that. It's pretty clear in the city charter that the auditor has access to information, but some people don't like to share that kind of information, and eventually we get those things worked out. We also do some wage enforcement. There are some labor laws that the auditor is charged with enforcing, and I have a couple slides later to go on that. I was elected 8 years ago in 2015. I was reelected in 2019, again in 2023. So if you voted for me, thank you very much. If you didn't, you won't get another chance to vote for me because I'm term limited for the next term. Next slide. So these are sales tax dollars, and I mean, I'm a CPA by profession. I've been in this for a long time, and I always like to gravitate towards numbers. Some people don't like numbers, but I am very comfortable with them. Though that is the sales tax, sales and use tax, which goes into our general fund. The general fund is where all dollars are accounted for, unless legally they're required to be accounted for in another fund. And in particular, the airport is accounted for in a separate fund called the Airport Enterprise Fund. But you can see from 2019 to 2020, we had over $100 million drop in sales tax revenue. That's the pandemic. And that was not a full year of the pandemic. We really had 2.5 months of 2020 before we hit the pandemic, and the sales stopped. You can see we also jumped, a good 25% from 2020 to 2021 as we're coming out of the, not coming out of the pandemic, but as the vaccine was starting to become available and we were becoming more comfortable going out and shopping and doing some of the things that we had not been able to do until we were vaccinated. I did highlight in green at the bottom there, that's the revenue from the food and beverage industry, from restaurants and bars. And it dropped from 146, almost 147 down to 80 from 2019 to 2020. Again, that's the impact of the virus we experienced, and bounced back in 2021. I don't have 2022 numbers yet. I don't have 2022 audited numbers yet. I like to work with audited numbers. That probably doesn't come as much of a surprise to me. Next slide, please. So what's left over at the end of every year? We have revenue that comes into the general fund. We have money that goes out, and what's left over is called the general fund balance. From 2019 to 2020, you can see there was a significant, almost $100 million drop in the general fund balance. That's how, basically how Denver was able to get through the pandemic without cutting services to you and to me. We also had furloughs. We also had, everybody took a 10% hit in pay, including myself. And it got us through. I mean, it's nice to have a fund balance like that when something, comes out of left field like this pandemic did. You can see it's bounced back rather readily in 2021. A lot of that is the impact of the rescue type funds, the federal government, feeding the economy as much as it did. We used those dollars on as they were supposed to be used, and we have looked at some of the use of those dollars, and they're all in shape and order. So that enabled the general fund balance to come back up. Right now, we've got a migrant crisis going on. I think we hit our 10,000 migrant coming into Denver today. That pales in comparison to what we were facing, a couple of years ago with the coronavirus. Next slide, please. Denver International Airport. 2019, we had over $1 billion in revenue, dropped down to 750 million in 2020. And some of that those were dollars that came from the federal government to make sure that the airports did not have to close down, if they stayed alive, even though air traffic was minimal. The airport is kind of it's a very interesting operation. You know, the dark bar on the left, you know, is revenue. The green bar is really what's available. It's on our margin, operating margin. The dark bar on the right is the operating expense at the airport. So you can see that, you know, on $1 billion worth of revenue, we made almost $700 million that's available for bonded debt retirement. Airport's a pretty capital intensive project. I mean, it's billions of dollars. Build the runway. We're actually building a 7th runway out there right now, and the price tag is estimated to be 1.5 billion. But it's a fascinating operation. If you ever get a chance to tour behind the scenes, I would recommend it highly. Next slide, please. The auditor is required to prepare an audit plan every year at the 3rd Monday in October. What that does is that we kind of announces to the bureaucracy that, you know, we're contemplating conducting an audit of your operation. We always have an audit going on at the airport. But what we do is we do performance audits. How were the dollars spent? The financial audit really kind of answers a stewardship question about the dollars, where they spent honestly, integrity, where they accounted for property. But the performance audit really answers the question, what did we get for those dollars that we spent? We look at contracts, we look at information technology, data analytics. We have a data analytics team that we're able to look at really hundreds of thousands of transactions, put these certain screens on them, and really kind of find the needle in the haystack, if you will. Next slide, please. We also do cybersecurity audits, and those don't get published. Everything that we do gets published. It's a public document, but the cybersecurity audits would be like holding out a sign for the bad guys that says, look here. And we don't want to do that, and actually required not to do that. How do we decide what to audit? We get information from people like you at meetings like this. If you have a question about your government, I mean, I'm happy to air the question. It doesn't mean I'm going to conduct an audit, but we have conducted audits because of feedback that we get in the community. We also, you know, we're in departments and agencies all the time. We're doing one audit, but you hear about something else, and we keep track of those things in what we call a risk tracker file. File is probably an incorrect description of it. We know what's going on in other governments around the country, around the state. We know what's going on in the community. And, you know, most recently we had an audit of the homeless encampments that came out last month. That obviously has been a concern of our community, as well as many other communities around the country and around the world. Next slide, please. So some of the audits we looked at the Great Hall construction, really at the procurement process for the current contractor that's out there now, which is Hensel Phelps. And they did not document a lot of what they were supposed to document in selecting Hensel Phelps. And actually the former CEO directed the staff not to document things, which, you know, is a big red flag, but what you don't have the documents, you really can't see what happened or why. The concessions, I think the oversight of contracts in the city and county of Denver is weak. It's poor. And I hope the next mayor, you know, will get that message. And we will meet with the next mayor shortly after the election to kind of brief them on what we see are some of the various issues in all the departments and agencies. But contract monitoring is a weak one. We looked at a particular restaurant out at the airport on one of the concourses. I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but when you don't reconcile sales to cash, it's a huge red flag. And, you know, brought that to the attention of the airport, and the airport did not seem too concerned about it. And We will follow up on that audit. We follow up on all the audit recommendations that the department agrees to. And we'll see what they've done about it. Encampments, I mentioned sidewalks. You're out here, sidewalks probably aren't the problem that they are in some of the older parts of Denver. But you know, the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure had a plan to really, they divided the city up into 10 or 11 different zones. The idea was to get through one zone every year, and we'd get through all the sidewalks in a 10-year period of time. 4, 5, 6 years into that, they hadn't finished the first zone, and they estimated that it would be over 80 years before they would be able to meet the sidewalk improvement plan. Now, the city has really redoubled its efforts on that, and we'll go back at some point in time and see what that's looking like. Campaign finance, I mean, the trash recycling, I don't know what's happening out here, but at least where I live, I mean, some days the trash gets picked up on the day it's supposed to, some days it doesn't. Some days the recycling gets picked up, the trash doesn't. They're trying to work through that. They had, what we pointed out in the audit before the program started was that the fleet is old. I mean, 50% of the fleet has like less than 3 years expected life to it. You're down, I don't know, 20% staff, and they're working those poor men and women. You know, they're required to work 60 hours a week, you know, to keep up with what's going on. And if you've ever done that, I mean, there's a point in time where you burn out and you say, I'm going to find something else to do. But I know the city recently has purchased some more garbage trucks from other vendors to get through this. Why don't we go to the next slide? Denver labor, this is where we enforce certain labor laws. We can go to the next slide. The prevailing wage, minimum wage, and civil wage. Davis-Bacon is a federal law. We do enforce that, but it's really the same as enforcing our prevailing wage law. Prevailing wage is capital construction projects using Denver dollars or on Denver property. The city is required to pay, you know, these are plumbers, electricians, sprinkler fitters, and whatever, what's called the prevailing wage. And there's a survey that's done to determine the prevailing wage. When I first started this job, I would say we were not enforcing the prevailing wage. It was sporadically enforced. Today, we are looking at 100% of the projects. Minimum wage was enacted effective January 1 of 2020, you know, and 75 days later, we were in a pandemic, but it was enacted and it moved the minimum wage up, and I had the responsibility for enforcement. And I think we've made a lot of progress there. Well, ideally, we would not want to have any person who had to have their wage recovered. That would mean the employer is paying everybody what they earned legally and on time. Educating the employer is part of the process. It's an important part of it. Because as you know, in a business, you can have turnover within the business. The payroll clerk leaves, goes somewhere else. New person comes in, they don't even know some of these compliance requirements, these laws that they have to comply with. So that's where we come in. Civil wage theft is anybody in the city and county. So under prevailing wage, we probably covered 120,000 workers in Denver. Adding minimum wage was probably got us up around 200,000 workers in Denver. With civil wage theft, we now cover anybody who works in Denver. So that's got to be somewhere north of 500,000 people. It's going to be a big lift. It just was enacted in January. Why don't we go to the next slide? Today it's $17.29 per hour. There are some exceptions for the food and beverage industry. They can take what's called a tip credit, has to be properly documented and all things like that. The food and beverage industry, when the minimum wage was passed in 2020, was really anxious to get this tip credit raised quite a bit. And that's a state law, that's not a Denver law. And to date, nothing has happened in that area. Next slide, please. I mentioned the new ordinance. So when somebody's not paid the wages that they're entitled to, that is considered wage theft. If someone is not paid, if they're entitled to, you know, some kind of sick leave or personal leave, and they don't get it, we consider that wage theft. Is that right? Yeah. Next slide.
Okay.
Like I said, when I started, we were largely not doing much to enforce the laws. We've come a long way. We're collecting, actually 2023, I talked to the gentleman this morning or last week. And we are up over $1 million in 2023, and I don't go a lot higher. Next slide. So I think we have done a pretty good job in a lot of respects. There's an association of local government auditors that has recognized our audit work. In 8 years, I've gotten an award for 6 different audits, and they're annual type of audits. We just got one last week, so we were able to up that. The US Comptroller General appointed me to an advisory committee on government auditing standards. By city charter, the auditor is required to conduct audits in accordance with what's called generally accepted government audit standards. Go to the next slide. You know, when I first ran 8 years ago, I would meet people in a community, you know, whether it's at a fundraising event or whatever it might be. I mean, wherever 2 or 3 people are gathered, you want to get there, tell them your spiel about what you want to do. And I had people say to me, you know, I don't know what the auditor does in the first place. So how do I know that you're going to do what you say you're going to do? And I thought, well, if I get elected, I'm going to come back. And I have done that. That's one of the reasons I'm here tonight. But I have been to over 300 of these kinds of meetings, neighborhood organizations, since I've been elected, telling people that I kind of think I'm doing, you know, what I said I was going to do, probably a lot more. We're on all the social media platforms. We have a newsletter. I'll pass this around if you're interested. I do get a lot of good comments on the newsletter. If you don't like it, of course, there's an unsubscribe button. You just don't have email, do you? I'm just kidding. Let's see. Annual report. We do publish an annual report, and now it's time for questions. Yep.
Do you have a
I have
question?
a question for the auditor. Hi there. So here in the community, you know, we hire about 150 kids that are 19 and under. When I first started here in 2006, I think minimum wage in Denver was $7.75 or thereabouts. You probably know that better than I do, but you know, fast forward 18 years, we've gone to 17, you know, 1729. And our workforce, which is generally 19 and under, that staff our parks and our pools and all that for seasonal work. I mean, it's caused all of these guys' rates to skyrocket. Is there any discussion on making exceptions for minimum wage on teenage, high school and college workers?
There are some exceptions for youth programs.
Yeah, but we don't fall into any of those. I mean, city of Denver has the same issue we have, and it's causing rates to, I mean, we've more than doubled in the 18 years that I've been here.
So I just enforce the law. I don't make the law. I think there's a gentleman that just came.
Yeah, no,
Does the person in the MCA Cube think that a certain kind of labor isn't deserving of a wage? That
Excuse me, Spencer, could you please just wait until the question's answered here?
Sure. Sorry. I just.
So it's just one concern that we always have, because our, you know, the amount of workers that we hire every year makes it harder and harder on all these folks.
The other side of that is how do you raise a family and making $17.25?
Well,
How
Excellent.
do you pay the rent?
I mean, my teenage daughter loves it. Trust me.
in the interest of time, because we are slipping behind schedule, two things for you, Auditor. One, we got a bunch of questions in the chat that we unfortunately won't have time to ask you here today. Is there a place where we could send those questions, collect responses?
You can send them to denverauditor.org.
Is that the preferred email address there on the screen? Okay, great. The bulk of those questions came from Spencer. Spencer, if there was one you wanted to prioritize for the auditor, what would it be?
I think it would be like, just, oh, sorry, I gotta scroll up through my questions. Sorry. My main one that I would want to question for you is, and thank you very much, that was a great presentation. But I was noticing that the 2021 numbers over the tax collection was much higher than 2020, 2019, 2018, however. So was that primarily a repeal of Tabor or a drawback of Tabor? And I know it wasn't purely we got back to work, yada, yada, yada. So like, why did that tax collection go so high in 2021? Regardless of what we were seeing, like, because there's obviously a huge deficit, and you look at the numbers, and there's a pretty steady like increase of that bar chart that like follows inflation and yada, yada, yada. But 21 like and 22 goes like way high. So like, what was that?
I think it was Tabor has no.
So yeah, so just the 2021 numbers, like in the amount of tax dollars that was collected, you know, what was that? Like, you know, I don't think it was a repeal of Tabor, but was it in regards to, you know, the dollars that were given from the federal government? Was it in regards to, or was it just like what, like it just, the number, like the bars just didn't make sense, right? Like they were so much higher than any other year. And you can see when you look at the bar charts and the graphs, like year over year, it's pretty standard. Like 2020 dropped quite a bit, understandably, but like 2021 was like, we're out, we're way higher than we should be. So that's my question. Is like, where did that come from? Was that?
That's right. I think we've got the question. Let's let the auditor answer it. Please.
I think I could get back to you with information, you know, by classification, food and beverage industry, travel industry, whatever it might be. But I don't have those numbers with me today. I just think there was a lot of pent up demand. And once we were safe going out in the community, people were spending money.
Oh, great. No, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks a million. Safe travels, I guess.
Dude, thanks, Auditor O'Brien.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Right.
Yeah. All right, so next up, we've got the MCA. We've got Diane, Dieter, and Kevin.
Well, yeah, so hi, I'm Kevin Burnett, MCA Executive Director. That's Diane right back there, who you guys probably all know. Between the two of us, we've been here for a lot of years. I've been here 18 years, Diane a few more years, and together we've kind of grown the MCA to what it is today. I'm here mainly to answer questions that people have on any specific issues, because our our scope of work doesn't change very much year over year here. We do parks, we do pools, we do programs. So we look for green grass, we look for blue water, and we look for, active programming throughout the community, which we like to provide. I would like to take an opportunity here just to thank our friends at CPUN, because we don't overlap with what CPUN does. I mean, we've grown up over the last 20 years with CPUN being growing through the years, really focusing on the efforts of especially schools and education and transportation. And we get asked a lot of times, what are you gonna do about transportation issues? We say, And you go ask our friends at CPUN, because they're really the ones that, you know, provide the advocacy that I think is super helpful throughout the community. And so we try to support them annually with funding. We also want to acknowledge the Foundation for Sustainable Urban Communities and the work that that group does, because everybody is familiar with the community fee that exists with every transaction of residential property. If you don't know what that is, please grab me afterwards. But we're able to fund the foundation upwards of $1.5 million annually to $2 million to be able to provide the programming. Now, certainly they take those funds and multiply them with the grants that they're able to go out and get. And so I think between the two, it's really been a great partnership. And that was a program that was put into the community very early on as something that this community was going to support through funding, through a dedicated funding source, these types of programs. Just getting into our normal operations, and I'll try to make it super quick, but with parks, we are, it's springtime, it's weeds, turn things into green, finding out what didn't survive the winter. So we're constantly on that program. And any issues that people have with parks or trees, we have about 10,000 trees out there that we're trying to take care of on a daily basis. It takes us a little bit more than a day to get through all those, but that's what we have. We try to work hand in hand with Denver Parks and Rec with all their all their parks as well. 7 pools we have. Everybody thinks, okay, we're down 1. Well, we had a fire. It was an unfortunate accident that happened at the Puddle Jumper Pool. It pretty much demoed the building that the office and the 2 restrooms and the pool support facility sat in. So we're in the process of rebuilding that. It has taken us longer than we had expected, mainly due to the fact that these pools are all publicly built. We had to go through a lot of steps in order to go through these processes. I'm glad to say that we have contracts in hand, and we have and are moving forward with the reconstruction process of that pool. Now, the pool systems, all intact. Outside, all intact. So we have worked with both, thrice, the district, the insurance companies, and the builders to operate this pool facility through the summer we are anticipating we're going to open in June. It could be as early as Father's Day weekend, as late as the end of June into the 4th of July holiday. That's kind of our window that we're looking at with all the stuff that we have to bring in. We have to bring in temporary restrooms. We have to build a tunnel through the facility. But I think all in all, we've done a good job of putting together a pretty good plan that at least puts families in water, which was our goal. Because of that, our pools they're highly used after hours. I will just say that. They can be used for nefarious reasons, and they can be used for nefarious reasons. We are starting to embolden the offenses and what we're putting around these pools. You'll see in both Aviator and Puddle Jumper and F-15, fences raising to 8 feet. I will tell you, one pool to do that at 8 feet is about $100,000 investment for each of those pools. So we are trying to find ways that limits our after hours activities, which again, nefarious. I mean, somebody started a fire to keep warm, absolutely. But that caused significant damage. The other are some of our, more tough activities that we deal with in the morning when all the planters and tables are in the water and that makes it tough. So we are working on ways to kind of harden the outside. It's what this country's doing across the board. We're unfortunately having to do it as well. So hopefully, and we've also beefed up some of the security that we have out there with the cameras and other things. So hopefully we can deter the negative activity that happens after hours. We never bothered with somebody jumping a fence and swimming and going out and not causing us any issues, but it's the other stuff that is really problematic. So all the pools will open on Memorial Day. Memorial Day weekend. That's the Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I know Memorial Day is on Monday, but we call it the weekend. So that will move forward. PJ will not be open that day, but will be open soon after for activity. And then our programs, Diane does a lot more than that, but that's one of the pieces underneath her purview. And we have kind of a new programs team because we had some that left. And now we are moving forward on just hopefully another great summer of concerts and movies and theater and opera and farmers market and all that's in place. And so hopefully people will come out and support those events. It's one of the things that we fund through kind of our normal operations, but it certainly helps, when people are out there, and we certainly enjoy all the people that come to all the great. We think it's the one thing that really sets this community apart from a lot of other communities. And we have this great space that people get to come in and utilize. So with that, the only other thing I'll say is we're trying to keep up on homeless encampments that pop up. They pop up all over the place. We're trying to keep those moderated as best we can. Working very closely with Denver Parks and Rec and District 5, and of course the councilman that's sitting over there that has probably, how many more days you have left? How many? 62. 62? Well, that's more than I thought you had. Okay, so, all in all, I can say, we have great partnerships with all our community partners from the city to CPUN, the foundation, and if there's questions, more than happy to answer those.
Thanks, Kevin. One question, and correct me if I'm wrong about this, but I seem to recall last year's pool open was kind of considered a soft open. And by that, I mean like more limited hours or like things weren't fully up and running yet. Is that going to be the same this year?
Well, no, we're going back into, we went into the pandemic and just wherever the auditor went. And we went into the pandemic and everybody remembers going into 2020 and we really didn't know, what we could do, how many people we could have. That was new for all of us to figure out how you open up a public facility that granted is outside, during the COVID pandemic. And so yeah, we shut things down, but we did actually open up that year, that summer of 2020. 2021, things started to come back. To 2022, they came back a little bit more. We're planning on a normal, had PJ not burnt down, we were planning on going back to our normal operational capacities, times, schedules. One of the things that we did lose in those pandemic years was staff. I mean, we hire 150 young people every May. And we hire them and we train them and we deploy them out to all the facilities, most of those dedicated towards pool facilities. And we lost a whole segment of those people. They were gone. And I don't know how many people hire people here, but I mean, we lost everybody between the ages of 19 and 23, which we used to have a lot of. And that was tough. And we're now finally getting back to where we have a returning staff that's a pretty high percentage of what we had the prior year. But staff just, they were gone. We didn't hear from them. We didn't see them. And that was tough. And those were always our lead people. So we've had to go through last year and this year, like training a whole new staff that are now, I mean, now some of them are 19, 20, 21 that are able to do that. Di?
One thing I will say about one thing that we did learn that was real positive during COVID was that on our bigger holidays like Memorial Day, 4th of July, and Labor Day, those days we do take reservations so that we can actually get more people into the pools, because it used to be people would line up, they'd get in and they'd stake the place out, and that was it. We were at capacity. Unless somebody left, we couldn't get anybody else in. So what we learned through COVID that was a positive was on those big holidays, it's really a positive to have 2 sessions and people can reserve which session they want. And we're able to get in twice as many people as we were able to.
Yeah.
So that was a positive that came out of the reservation system that we had during that time.
Yeah, we're doing other things. And so we've kind of added on to that, even where we're adding kind of early access and things like that, that just allow the residents kind of a little bit of an advantage each and every day. The pools are public pools. They're funded by tax exempt dollars. So we have to abide by all of those rules and restrictions, which means, we can't limit, we can't limit who we give access to. But so we're kind of looking at programs that have that. So, yeah. Good. Yeah.
Ryan, did you want to add anything?
Can I add something? Sorry, I'm sorry, guys. Like, you guys have been dealing with me very well, but so you're saying that you can't have programs that, but you can have programs that extend access. So like, what kind of programs are you looking for to extend that access? Like, how are you looking?
We have early access for residents prior to our open swim, things like that. So then basically, and then we have the reservation system, but there's always going to be a public component to everything that we do.
Sure. I mean, like, yeah, you got better occupancy, but you didn't get better employment. So like, that's fine, like what have you, but like.
Spencer, we need to move on. We have, we're
Brian,
at.
I'm sorry, Brian. Like, I understand, but like, yeah, I'm just here.
Thank you. I'm gonna mute you.
Yeah, mute me. It's fine.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
There's any questions, and always, hopefully everybody feels free to either call me or email me or Diane. Either way is perfectly.
Can we get their emails in the chat? Is that something you can do?
Brian has my email. I know that.
Thanks. Thanks, Kevin. Thank you, Diane. We are wrapping up here. We have, we're hoping to do so here with Councilman Herndon, who's joined us.
62 days.
62 days.
I'm jealous.
Where we have a seat.
You want my seat? So the Nuggets are up, so that's a good thing. They're up, I think they're up by 12 or so. Thank you all for coming to this. And I want to thank CPUN, I see from the sustainable communities. You know, I'm a little nostalgic because I go back to 2009 when I first moved to this neighborhood, became a block captain, and then joined at the time the Sun Board. And they're all volunteers. And to what they do to make sure that the community is involved in so many different facets. We don't thank you enough. CPUN, Park Hill, Montbello, East Colfax, all that you all volunteers do. So sincerely, thank you for that. And for those, happy Mother's Day to those that celebrated last week, for those who enjoyed that. And I say 62 days, but I don't want that to imply, because I've gotten emails like, hey, Councilman Herndon, I know you're close to being termed out, but could you do X, Y, Z? But we're not just coasting. Whatever you need for us to do until July 17th. I probably won't be in the office July 17th because that's a Monday, new term, the new council member will be there. But we're here to serve. So we're just having a conversation about a traffic signal on the south side, and my office is going to look into that. So whatever it is we can do to assist, I know you all know how to reach out.
Who's talking right now?
This is Councilman Herndon, Spencer. Could
Herndon,
you,
thank you. All right, good. No, that's all I need to know. Thank you. Thank you.
please,
Thank you, Councilman Herndon.
please no more interruptions, please, Spencer.
And
I
Spencer,
will mute myself and I will go away and be muted. Because that's what democracy is about.
we have a newsletter that we put out monthly, so we do it on social, we email it out, so easily to reach out to me. I actually thought I checked my mail before I came here because I thought I had my ballot, but I did not get my ballot, but they're coming. So they got mailed out yesterday, I believe. So you've got two you need to vote for. You need to vote for District 8 specifically, as well as the mayor. So please make sure you exercise your right to vote. Tuesday, January the 6th is election day. So please make sure your voice is heard. And what did I say? For January. I say January. I always say that. June 6th. Tuesday, June 6th. June 6th is election day. And one thing I'm excited about as I talk about moving forward is Northeast Denver Leadership Week. And if you're not familiar with that, that's a leadership program I do. This will be the 13th year that I've done that. We take high school students from all over the district and we show them different leadership opportunities. The MCA is a great partner in that because we utilize the Cube as our home base, but we're doing that June 6th through the 9th again. And we've got 50 high school students throughout the district, and I'm excited to move that forward. And I'm just here to answer any questions. How can we assist you?
Go ahead.
I almost don't want to ask, but the, with the, potential for like all of the garbage cans to have to move to one side of the alley or the other, where is that in implementation in this community? Do you know?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. So I think it was last year I came in and I mentioned that. So I did a drive tour with Dottie and I actually do need to follow up because we lost our solid waste manager who I did the drive with. But the challenge we have is and I actually thought it was standard. It's not in Central Park. We have very wide alleys and then we have very narrow alleys. And they drove through to show me the challenges that come with that. And then they actually brought a truck. So I could see there was a council person. So, coming down this one, we would literally hit this fence, we would hit that household. So what they were looking about doing is see if there was a way to do a pilot in particular neighborhoods, but then that becomes confusing for some neighborhoods. Well, we'll say, the south side has it, but then up in Wicker Park, you don't. So that was a struggle we had, but we do recognize we need to be more efficient when it comes to that. So that's where we are. So I'll follow up with that, Amanda, to see where they were. But yeah, we did. I got to see some very narrow alleys, particularly south of I-70, where they did that. North of I-70, they're mostly wider, but in the south part, there really are some narrow alleys. And I see some nodding heads. You might live in some of those alleys that are very narrow. I just want to thank the councilman for all of his work over the years since you, Councilman Herndon, have come on. You've been a great partner. You've done fantastic work and you have been just a true leader in the city and the community. I just want to publicly thank you for all that. I mean, over the years, it's been fantastic. Let me know if there's any way I can help. We got to figure them out.
If I can, Councilman Herndon, I'd just like to echo that because I think your relationship with our board is a unique one, and a particularly strong one. You and your team, Amanda, specifically Amanda Stefan, has just been so great to work with. And you've been a great partner to work with for 12 years now. When I think about our relationship with you and our working relationship, I think the thing that I think most fondly of and with most pride is that blood drive. Not just because we just did a blood drive, but we put together a proclamation to expand donation rights for men who have sex with men. That was a really meaningful thing to be a part of, and you were a great collaborator and partner on that. And I think it exemplified the way that you conduct yourself as a councilman and the way that you've worked with CPUN as a partner. So thank you for that as well.
Jeff, I need to let everybody in this public meeting know, we removed Spencer from the meeting. He was being disruptive and typing very rude chat. So just so you know, I removed him from the meeting. He has the CPUN email. If he has anything, we'll talk about it. I encouraged him to attend the regular meeting. This was not a regular meeting and it was not the forum for ongoing questions. So,
okay. We were going to wrap it up now, but I see Representative Bacon sitting over here, and I'm wondering if she might want to say something there, just address the room.
Okay, I'm sorry. Hello, everyone. I didn't need to show up so late. I've been trying to wrap up session, but I did want to come and say hello. I know.
Do you mind getting a little closer? We can, that would.
Sorry.
Right in front.
Yeah, there you are.
Should I just?
Yeah, right there. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's perfect.
Thank you, everyone. I apologize for arriving late. Trying to wrap up session, as you know, we ended last Monday. And now I don't know if you recall, now House District 7 is only north of I-70. So I have Northfield and below I-70 is House District 8. So that just changed. I know, I'm just so like, you all are such a big part of my community. I'm sorry, this is me trying to hug a whole neighborhood. That's not how it works. But so I have the privilege of serving now the Northfield, and it's not actually north of I-70. It's pretty much Northfield Boulevard. So if you, the apartments, interestingly, next to like JCPenney, it's House District 8, if you didn't know that. But so for those of you I haven't met before, I'm Jennifer Bacon. I have the privilege of serving in the legislature, and it was a very big year. I'm more than willing to answer any questions about what we did this session. However, the top 3 things that we worked on continue was gun violence prevention, more funding into housing, and we try to do a lot about environment as well as protecting reproductive rights. The Democrats, I'm a Democrat, so I get to be a little partisan. Okay, anyway. But that being said, we have 46 members in the House. So that is we were, I think, maybe 1 member short of having an actual supermajority. And so this session was the session that we really had to get organized around that. But I will say the things that House District 7 really pushed me on, I want to give a big shout out to the students at Northfield High School. They showed up for me in big ways. We passed a bill to limit harassment, sexual harassment and discrimination in schools because of our students showed up. If you recall, a couple years ago, there was huge walkouts. I'm not sure if you all remember. Students were really saying we want more clarity in this. So they showed up there. They also showed up for gun violence prevention. And unfortunately, we've seen a lot of incidents here in the city, but our students were very clear in saying what we want is mental health supports. What we know we need is voice in the space in which we're passing laws. And so I was able to work on expanding the extreme risk protection order space. And that is if you know someone who owns weapons is a danger to themselves or others, you can remove their weapons for a fixed period of time. And we work to expand that to include educators, physical and mental health providers, as well as district attorneys. We also, you have to be 21 to buy a gun in the state now, and we have 3-day waiting periods that we passed. When it comes to housing, we continue to put more funding into our temporary programs. We've got to do a little bit more work with the city and county of Denver to figure out where those dollars are going to go. And we've talked a lot this year, Representative Herndon, about supporting the unhoused. Did I call you representative? That's where are you coming from? You look too young to be retired. Okay, but we spent quite a few back and forths on talking about what is the city's version of supporting the unhoused and how the state can support. And primarily our way to support is with funding and to put a lot of dollars into that. The way that we ended session was talking about taxes. So I don't know if you're in land use, did anybody? Okay, it's funny, the Capitol's like a bubble and you think your whole world is about two bills. But we tried to end on a land use bill, which I think I need to spend more time on, particularly talking with your community. It was Senate Bill 213. And if you didn't have a chance to look into it, if you have any leisurely Sunday reading and you want to look into proposed legislation, would love any thoughts about the governor's proposal for land use across the state. Because it does include neighborhoods like ours, interestingly, organized development along rail lines, which includes the A line for us, water use, and quite honestly, I think maybe for House District 7 going more east towards Green Valley Ranch would probably be more impactful only because this is already a planned community, right? But that was a huge deal. It kind of fell apart, but it's the governor's interest. And then we worked in the last few days on a tax refund or rebate on what to do with Tabor, particularly to try to support public education a little bit differently and to get refunds out a little bit more equitably. But those are very big deals. The Republicans walked out on that last day and protest. And so the way that it hit the news cycle, we just wanted to be sure that people had opportunities to ask questions about it, to see what was going on there. So for environment, I tried to take on oil and gas. It was fun. It was anyway, and so one of the things that we're working on is ambient air quality. If you all aren't aware, Colorado has been in non-compliance with the Clean Air Act for about 20 years. We keep issuing permits to dig as well as to operate, but we're not taking into account air quality, projected impact to air quality before we do that. And so I tried to run a bill to say that we should do that. So what we got this summer is an interim committee to actually create a definition of cumulative impact, which is actually very important. The other thing that the littler things that we did was happy to co-sponsor again. Last year it was House Bill 1101. And so free transit days, if you all did have a chance to take the bus dang or the train downtown, please do, because this whole summer it'll be free to try to get some cars off the road. Plus our kids really like it. Living out here, sometimes it takes 30 minutes to get to a museum or downtown or something like that. And so our students showed up to help with that one too. Okay, I'll stop there because I know I'm at the end of the meeting and I kind of crashed this. I'm very sorry, but happy to answer any questions. Thanks so much for having me. Sure.
Yes, it almost seems like the House or government is out of touch of the real community needs. It seems like they're passing all these bills that, they want to tackle the main.
Mhm.
That's what it appears to be. And with this tax thing, it's, it's unaffordable now, wait until the taxes come. What's going to happen with this tax rebate quicker?
With it, what's going to happen with
The tax rebate quicker, or what was that they were trying to pass?
So what we passed was not necessarily quicker, it was a redistribution of the rebates. And so long bill, it's Senate Bill 303. And so what we have, and actually we referred it to the tax. So we didn't do it because, to do anything with Tabor, you have to refer it to the taxpayer. So what we did was refer this measure to the taxpayer. So technically speaking, what's going to be on the ballot is a redistribution of the refund. We didn't put on the ballot to necessarily change the caps, but we put on the ballot where that's going to go. And so the big stakeholders who worked on it were primarily public education and early childhood education. As you know, we really struggle with being able to fund it fully. We have been told we have to fund education fully. We have not done that in about 15 years now. And so what we want to do is restructure where the refunds go into public education without necessarily changing the taxes we can bring in and spend. And so it will be a referred measure. It'll be on your ballot. this November as well, because we can't just change that, but the legislature has to approve it first that they want to put it on the ballot, you know, so anything on the ballot with letters comes like Proposition EE, or it comes from the legislature. So that's what we did. So technically speaking, it's still up to the voters to decide if that's what they'd like to do. And sorry,
Or what's just lower the mill levels?
lower the mill levies? Well, which one? Well, for public education.
No.
Oh, I was like, dude, which one?
I'm saying.
Yeah.
Overall tax, so generate all this extra money. Where's that going since they're only budget for extra?
Well, the mill levy. So maybe I'm not in the right zone. When you say mill levies, I go straight to public education. And maybe, is that where you're talking
All
about?
the mill levers.
So like all the Metro Dish, all of those things, you know, honestly, we do have those conversations and there's only so much the state can control. I mean, House District 7 is nothing but Metro districts, like honestly. So we have these conversations all the time and they are very contentious. You know, there are some districts, for example, down towards Castle Rock in Douglas County. Douglas County, they were sued. They were trying to use millet to steal water. So there's like a whole bunch of things going on when it comes to what are these metro districts for? How long should their financing terms be? Who should be on those boards to determine the financing? I mean, that was a battle this year. Green Valley Ranch, if you recall, I don't know if you've heard of all the foreclosures for like, well, I mean, we had to say who gets to sit on the board, who gets to think about these financing terms, because Green Valley Ranch, at least 3 of those metro districts are like at least 25 years old, right? And the bond structure is for 30 years. And so the question is, who gets to actually refinance and think through this? Because right now, some of the developers, not only can they set the rates, they also get to own the debt. And that's like, whoa, you know, I don't get to do that on a school board. I could never do that. And so these are the questions that we had to answer. And to be honest, they came into conflict with a lot of the land use conversation. I think we weren't able to get that bill passed because of, quite honestly, like all of Highlands Ranch is an HOA. If people didn't know that, it's not an actual city. So these are the things that we had to figure out as a matter of maintaining places per being legislated to do particular type of development. And quite honestly, I do think it's a conversation we need to have here in the state, but we probably had it too hastily, in all honesty. Does that make sense? But we've tried to mitigate special districts. Denver has like a 12, right? We have the arts districts, right? And we have city, county, fire, but like just Brighton has fire district and all of those things. And I do think that that's the way Colorado's been financing a lot of public services. And like I said, I do know that there is an interest in the legislature to get a map of actually what's happening across the state, at least along the Front Range. Downstate, you know, their education is 60-40s. The state pays for 60% of their public education. So like the San Luis Valley and the mountains, they have issues with water infrastructure, but they do not have any sort of special districts or water district, things like that. And that's where the state sends a lot of money. And so we have to analyze that. And that's also the tension we have in the capital. It's literally the urban-rural divide. And when it comes to state development, you know, was that helpful?
It is, it just didn't really, I think everybody needs to answer it.
Yeah. Oh, that's real. I think there are 100 different opinions in the legislature. But like I said, Denver has a huge influence in the capital, but our structures are just not like anybody else's. And we tend to have a lot of Denver versus everyone else fights. And so like I said, I do think there's a cohort of us that needs to get a sense of actually how all the special districts are being used. We have a catalog now, which we didn't have before, quite honestly. And we have to, I think this is like a state interest. But if I'm being 100% honest, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I fight with firefighters over fire districts, because and the first thing they say is like, we are not City and County of Denver. Like firefighters were cut out of the 303, the referred question, they were cut out because they were like, if you can't mess with fire, I mean, it became really political. And I can't actually ask why they're more special or answer.
Oh, I know.
But you know what I mean, but that happened.
We can talk.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. I know you need to go. My bad. Okay.
Everybody else wants.
Right.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Any parting questions for Representative Bacon? Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that. But happy to come back. And then if you need anything, let me know. We're off session so I can answer the phone. And, you know, not heading back to January, and pray for us all, because God bless America, you know.
Thank you.
You.
Right, we are all done unless there's any parting comments or questions from the room or the Zoom call. No? Go Nuggets.
It's good to meet you, Matt. Things are well. How about with?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Thanks very much. Excited to.
You're still there.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
I see you soon. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so much. I really appreciate that, Sandra.
Yeah.